Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Falcons podcast. And like we've been teasing just a little bit, the Falcons podcast on Mondays and Wednesdays is going to take a turn at the turn of the new year, where at least one of these days, today it'll be Wednesday, will be more NFL centric. We'll start talking some draft. We'll start talking some playoffs, free agents, some of the big news around the NFL. We'll start hitting on that and do more of a wider scope show because, frankly, Nick and I enjoy the process of the wider scope, and especially when it starts coming to the off season and all of the moves and the team building and intrigue. And by the way, I'm Scott Kennedy. I go by Scout Kennedy on my various social media channels. This is Nick Kendell. You can find him at Nick Kendell MHH on Twitter. I am in Atlanta. Nick is in Seattle, so we are coast to coast with our football coverage. So, Nick, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
Cannot complain. It's getting excited for upcoming vacation here in about a month and getting back in the swing of things. I went into the office a good bit over break. I like to get a lot of stuff done when there's nobody there. Because then I can kind of spread out and play music and, not have to worry about things. Now it's back to the chaos, which is fine. But excited to do the show today and happy that it's already Wednesday.
Yeah, it is. I've been a day ahead all week, though, so it feels like Thursday to me. I don't know why. It's like, all right, the kids are back to school. And the way they were acting, they didn't need to go back on Wednesday. They needed to go back on Monday. So January 2nd, I'm going to push for that next year. Lots of folks coming in on YouTube, and as the Facebook stream is starting to open up. So let's say good morning, Dave. Good morning, Dave. Appreciate you being here. And Michael Ranquillo coming in says, good morning, Scott and Nick on the Falcons podcast. Big Al is here. He says, good morning, gentlemen. And go Dogs. He's not the only one saying go Dogs. He's saying, good morning, Scott and Nick and Dog Nation. It's now National Championship Week. Dog Nation, I have a feeling that we're going to have more input from the Dog Nation than we're going to have from the TCU bunch. I think that's a the neutrals might lean towards TCU in this one, but they're not the ones that are going to be buying tickets. So it's going to be pretty heavily red versus purple, I think. Nathan Floyd says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Good morning, everybody. And again, appreciate you being here. Nick and I are going to go through our first top 10. We're going to go through the first, we're going to mock the top 10. So we'll spend a little time on each one. As we move along, we'll go through and we'll pick different teams and we'll go through maybe a full first round. But for a lot of y'all, this will be the first time you've been introduced to these players. Also want to touch on some of the news of the week. First off, we touched on this yesterday on our show, but this is a different channel, somewhat different audience. Want to just say, our prayers and thoughts are with Damar Hamlin. So far, so good. This is day 2 that, I almost feel like no news is good news at this point to a certain extent. So, keep fighting, kid. The precedent for me on this one was Christian Eriksen, who was a Denmark midfielder, international footballer, just collapsed on the field, and they recognized it right away, and they have defibs right there on site, and they revived him, but they thought he was gone too. And a year later, he was playing again. He's playing with Manchester United now. So there is precedent for this, for especially these athletes that are, frankly, I call a different caliber of human being. They heal faster, they do things faster. So keep fighting, kid. We're all thinking about you.
Yeah, and just a positive of all of this, or something positive reaction to this, is his toy drive is now up over $5 million, where it was like, I think, 20,000 before the freak accident. So good to see people, good people coming together, and what can we do to help? And they're saying direct funds here, help him. He's a very charitable, good guy, and seeing that impact. So good to hear things are improving there. Again, we probably won't know the extent of it for a while. I mean, the oxygen not getting to the brain for a while is a question, and forget back to football, back to
I'm not worried about football.
Normal life. Yeah, exactly.
Just live a long, safe, happy, healthy life with your friends and family. That's what we're going for at this point. The other big news, I think, right now, Nick, is the coaching searches that are starting to heat up just a little bit. Jim Harbaugh's name is in the mix a little bit. Now, it seems strange that the viral tweet going around today is from a reporter in Charlotte that was talking to Harbaugh from Queen City Fox or something, who has like 9,000 followers. And this guy's, a small, Charlotte's not a small town, but, this isn't this isn't a Michigan reporter coming out of Detroit or, the places he's looking. And I guess you might say he is interested in Carolina. Carolina is one of the teams that it could possibly be interesting. So that could be the tie there. But the quote was that I'm probably going to stay at Michigan. So whether the truth to that or not, whatnot, we'll see. But getting Harbaugh away from Michigan is not going to be easy. He's got that program in a good spot right now. There's some people that are getting a little tired of him flirting with the NFL all the time. But while he is well compensated with a $7 million base salary, he still lacks behind Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, that the big SEC guys. Still a little bit behind there, and we know Michigan's got the money. So, does Harbaugh come out of the NFL? That's kind of the big watch right now.
I think he will, personally, but maybe that's just me with a little bit of hopium there. Having another quality head coaching candidate, believing that Sean Payton is not imminent to Denver. So I believe he will. Money's going to be there. It seems like teams are willing to not only give him money, but power as well, which was one of the things it sounds like he's looking for. One of the reasons that it didn't work out in San Francisco was the power play between him and Trent Baalke. So I think he will come out. I personally think that Charlotte is the best position as well as far as a
Carolina,
immediate.
I get you.
Excuse me. Carolina is the best one that's currently going to be available. I guess I'm assuming that Steve Wilkes will be fired. He's done a bang up job there, in my opinion. But if Harbaugh's there, we know that Tepper is somebody who wants to make a splash as well. He was the wealthiest owner until the Walton Penner Group came along, I believe. So I think that Charlotte position is a good one. The only negative that they really have, it's not and no disrespect to Carolina fans that are there, but there's not like a crazy, money making franchise. And B, they only have like $1 million in cap space right now. They can free up some like everybody can, but they don't have a lot of ability to build a new type of team or scheme through free agency to jumpstart a new head coach coming in. But as far as a offensive infrastructure, no team has the offensive line that Carolina has out of the available teams, and Harbaugh is all about that power run game, physicality, and offensive line.
You might want to build your own. I think if this is a long-term project, where do I want to spend the next 10 years of my life? Then I'm not necessarily worried about the current roster so much. As long as I'm going to be able to have a say or, final say in the team building, I don't mind starting from scratch, especially if you're going to pay me $12 to $15 million a year. I don't mind building that up. And if you decide that it's not working early enough for you and you want to fire me, fine, pay me my $75 million and I'll have my pick of college jobs or NFL jobs. It's not going to go away. So I get that one for sure. Nathan says he's hearing that Tepper and Harbaugh had a meeting to discuss the opportunity of head coach. And, the Athletic was saying 2 days ago that if the right offer comes along, he's gone. To me, that's agent speak. I might stay at Michigan. Okay, well, let's make sure that these NFL teams are up in the ante. I'm going to talk with Denver. Okay, well, the wealthiest owner, let's make sure that we know that we're talking with the people with the deepest pockets. It's all agent speak right now, which they lie as much as coaches and general managers. And they don't necessarily lie. They just have a very good interest in making sure that there is a bidding war. So making sure that I know that you know that you know that he knows that you're both after him. That's my job as an agent. So expect that to happen. I think one of the things we wanted to do here today was get into our first mock draft, mocking the top 10. It's fairly well set. I do like and I'll share the screen over here. I do like the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator, which is what I'm going to use. But their draft order is messed up. So we're going to force a couple trades. That's how I figured we would work around it. We could force some trades and make this happen. So let's say good morning to Joe. He says, good morning, Scott and Nick. Happy New Year to both of you fellas. Appreciate it. Happy New Year to you and yours as well. But Nick, you ready to get started? You want to mock the top 10?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited. This is our first one of the year. It's always a fun time to get. I mean, this is going to be our lives the next 4 months. So excited to do that, and bummed that the draft order is not set here, but it's not going to matter a week from now because the top 18 will be very much set. So excited to do this.
It's pretty close. So there's not going to be any big wild swings. Chicago could end up with the number one. The Texans, the number one overall. The Texans and Colts play each other, so that game matters a little bit. But the Colts won't fall any farther than one spot below the Rams, which they've got. Like I said, they've got this messed up. So good morning, Albert. Appreciate you being in here. Thanks for coming in. So we're gonna go one round. We don't have to worry about the defaults randomness because we're gonna be all the teams in this one. And then once I enter the draft, I will I'll zoom in and see what looks best for y'all here. So I think that looks okay.
Yeah.
I think that looks okay right there where we can see it. I'm going to go out one more. I think one more out to 175 might be a little bit better. Okay. I think that works, that we can see that enough. Hopefully everybody. The Texans are on the clock. That one does show up. Lit Central coming in saying good morning. Rise up and go Dogs. Welcome in. Appreciate you being here. So Nick, I'm going to let you pick the odds, and that would give you the first pick. And should we have trades? The thing is I don't know the values because there's no way that the trades aren't going to happen. You know, if Chicago's sitting at 1 or 2, they're trading. I think they're coming out of that spot.
Probably. Unless they love one of those defensive players and they think there's a massive tier difference between Jalen Carter, Will Anderson, and whoever they get next. And
I don't
somebody doesn't
come
offer
below
a good
4.
value.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So, right now they've got, we need to move this around because Arizona is 4. I'm talking to Indianapolis about, maybe I don't want to come below 4. Chicago wants to come down.
Yep.
But, they want to start talking to somebody that needs a quarterback like Indianapolis. Indy, you want to get your guy? You're going to have to come up and get him. Or we'll take him and trade him. So something like that. I think Chicago is in a very good position to get Will Anderson or Jalen Carter and pick up some of those draft picks that they used on Justin Fields. I think Chicago's in the most interesting spot in this draft. Maybe not so interesting. Why don't you go ahead and choose? We'll go ahead and get started here. Texans are on the clock.
I do think there is a discussion here between Bryce Young and the two other defensive talents on the board because I don't think Bryce Young is as much of a slam dunk, no doubt, can't miss quarterback prospect as some make him out to be. He's a very fun, dynamic player, a playmaker within the pocket, but he is one of the smallest quarterbacks that would ever have come through the combine in terms of his mass. There have been quarterbacks as tall as him, but as far as the 190 weight, 190 pounds that he's approximately at, how many quarterbacks out of the last 20 years at the combine do you think have weighed 195 pounds or less? It's out of like 700.
I don't know. There haven't been any that gone in the first 3 rounds.
No, there haven't been. There's been 2. One of them being Seneca Wallace. I'm sure you remember that.
They didn't go first 3.
Nope. So he is very much an outlier in terms of his body type and build. I also don't think he has the no doubt hang your hat on trait that you saw with like the athleticism, Kyler Murray. He doesn't have a Josh Allen arm talent or anything. Also, but damn, he's a playmaker. He's an extremely hard worker, and he plays the quarterback position. And he's my number 1 quarterback in this class. So I'm going to swing here on Bryce Young. I talked about reasons why you might not take him. I think that Caleb Johnson and Drake May in next year's class are better quarterback prospects or have the ability to be better quarterback prospects. But you're picking number 1 overall right now. It seems like a team that's improving. I'm going to go with Bryce Young, get that quarterback in there.
I think that's where I'd go to. I'm going Bryce Young with that pick. The other part that we talk about a lot, but maybe not on in this circumstances, Nick, is how much the game has changed. Okay, the way that they protect the quarterbacks these days, and it's gotten more and more protection basically every year. It seems like we've reached an extreme on that side of things, Nick, where I don't have to worry about him taking a beating as bad as I would have before because you're really not allowed to hit him anyway. I mean, I know he runs around and he takes hits, but the size and, hey, we're going to break this guy in half. Big guys get hit hard and they get hurt too.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as big a concern as it would have been even 10 years ago. So, and I agree with you. I think, the arm isn't, it's not top 5. It's not wow. It's not.
It's good.
Oh my! But it's good.
It's good.
It's good enough.
Yeah,
for sure. For all the other intangibles, if we start thinking of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, the ones with the arms that spring to mind right away for me are Brett Favre, John Elway, and that's it, really. I mean, off the top of my head.
Patrick Mahomes, maybe. I know it's too early to
But
crown him, but
Mahomes doesn't have an Elway Favre arm. He's got
I
a
think it's close. I think
I
his
don't. I don't.
yeah.
I don't. I think he's got a different type of arm. Matt Stafford has an arm that's closer to him. Josh Allen could be in
Josh Allen.
that guy, but
Justin
as
Herbert.
far as the straight heater, I mean, he's not rolling right, looking back left and throwing it across the field 50 yards down. I mean, Elway and Favre were just freaking different.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Bryce Young is closer to Mahomes in my eyes than Mahomes is to Elway and Favre for arm strength. That's the way I see it. I mentioned the Chicago Bears. Now, they want Will Anderson. They want Jalen Carter. Can they get out of this spot can they trade down? Because they would I was like, I'd be happy with either one of them if I'm the Chicago Bears. So can I manipulate this draft where I come down 1 or 2 spots, and that would be worth at least a pair of seconds, maybe even another first, and still get one of these guys? I think that's going to be what you're really, really looking after. And one of the big players you're looking at right there is Seattle.
Yeah.
Is Seattle going to stick with Geno Smith? Geno Smith had a fantastic year, Pro Bowler. He'll be 33 next year. And, you mentioned he fell off a little bit, and I looked at his numbers and the teams that he kind of fell off against, the Chiefs and the 49ers, okay. Otherwise he's over 100 on his rating on everything.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to roll the dice with Geno Smith one more year and see if I can get a fire-breathing defensive lineman here in this spot.
They do have another first-round pick that's going to be borderline draft or borderline playoff spot. And also, just for the point of hilarity, I guess here, the Bears are on the clock with number 2, with the Seahawks number 3. Bears traded up from number 3 to 2 to take a quarterback back in the 2017 draft.
That Trubisky?
To go up and get Trubisky. They traded up one spot with the 49ers in a draft that had Watson and Mahomes in it to get Trubisky. And just would be hilarious if they traded down from 2 to 3 to see that happen again, for them to take the defensive lineman.
That's what I'm trying to do if I'm the Chicago Bears, is in this spot, if Bryce Young is gone, from move to 2 to 3. And then if and when the Seattle, if they want and they take C.J. Stroud, I'm trying to move down again. I'm getting on the phone with the Cardinals or not the Cardinals, but with who's actually in 5. This is what's bothering me.
The Colts.
The Colts
right now, but that'll change because they play the Texans.
Yeah, so. The Colts. The Colts play the Texans. So we'll change this up when I get to this spot and make this trade, because anyway, Bears on the clock. I'm not going to do this right now. Right now, I'm going to take the guy I think I can make the biggest impact for me right now for the Chicago Bears, and I'm going to take Will Anderson, number 2 overall.
Did you make any consideration for Jalen Carter?
Of course.
I know that edge is higher. The one thing I will say is that the general manager for Chicago probably should not draft purely for their current coaching staff. You want to get scheme transcendent players. But the thing that makes Matt Eberflus's defense tick has been a dominant 3 technique. And Jalen Carter.
And that's where I would look on that is, how am I at edge? I don't know the Bears well enough yet, and I will.
They need help.
Get better at this to say, do I have an edge or not? Am I good at edge or not? And I can always use more defensive linemen. I mean, Jalen Carter's good enough to play any one of the 4 spots or any one of the 3 spots if you wanted to go 3-5, 3-4 with a pair of edges. For me, the bigger impact, unless you get Aaron Donald, and Jalen Carter may be Aaron Donald, but that's a big if.
Yeah,
it's more likely you're going to get a hit on a guy like Will Anderson coming off the edge.
Yep.
So that's where I would go with this. But again, Bears fans, I'm figuring out how I can, if those 2 guys are still on the board, I'm figuring out how to work my way down a spot at a time until I only have one of them left, and then I'm taking them. And I'd be okay with Will Anderson or Jalen Carter.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Both of those guys are damn good prospects. Anderson was incredible last season, a little bit of a down year this year, but crazy athleticism. you'd be happy with either of them. And this is going to be easy for me now. I know that the Seahawks are very much in the quarterback conversation. They will do their work on the position as well. But I'm going to make it simple right now, not do anything too crazy, especially for our first mock of the year. I'm going to go with Jalen Carter at this pick. The Seahawks defense has been atrocious this season, especially on the defensive line. They don't have any real difference makers on the entire unit. Their best player on the defensive line this year at edge has been Uchenna Nwosu. Boye Mafe has not really stepped up yet so far this season. Poona Ford is just kind of a meh defensive tackle. They need some difference makers up front. Pete Carroll's still here. He's going to want some defensive difference makers. I think Jalen Carter has a very strong argument for being the single best player in this draft class. So that's who I'm going to go with.
Okay, I can go with that. And again, like I said, I'd be willing to go back with Geno Smith one more season. This was the best year of his career. He played well enough. You can win big with him if the rest of your team is strong enough. So I would. He's earned that right. He's a free agent. He's going to earn a paycheck too. Yeah. But he's not going to get a $30 million type of deal. He'll get somewhere in between where he is now and the top of the tier, kind of like a prove it one more time type of deal. But he is a free agent, and I would be talking to him about an extension right now. Now, the coming up is actually the Arizona Cardinals. So we're going to force a trade.
You should trade with the Colts.
Yeah, I have to move it. I have to do a trade here. I have to trade the Detroit Lions, select a team to trade with, Arizona Cardinals, and then we'll have to do it again. But we go 4, and we're going to force this trade. So we've got the Arizona Cardinals on the clock, who are now kind of in the situation that the Atlanta Falcons found themselves in not too long ago, which is like, well, I really wanted those two guys, and now I'm sitting at 4, and I don't need a quarterback. I don't think you need a quarterback. I may be wrong on that one. Let's zoom back in here. Are they on the phone right now with anybody who might think Will Levis should go number 4? Absolutely. Are you calling right now? This is when you want to get on the phone with all of those quarterback needy teams, including the Indianapolis Colts coming up. The Colts are sitting there, okay, saying, okay, you're not drafting a quarterback. I'm going to need one. There's still one I like, but the Cardinals are on the phone with the Colts saying, hey, we got the Falcons on the phone, and they love C.J. Stroud.
I mean, you also have the Raiders who are moving on from Derek Carr. It's very much they're picking right now the 8th overall selection. And I've also heard that Tepper is really interested in Will Levis. So those are the 3 teams right now I think that are the most likely to move up. And we got Lit Central coming in saying I feel like Bryce is going to be another Jalen Hurts. I'm not sure. Bryce Young and Jalen Hurts are about like 40 pounds of difference between those two quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, you can run quarterback power. If you run quarterback power outside of maybe once a season with just to catch him off guard with the likes of Bryce Young, somebody should sue you for negligence. That would be terrible. But as far as the playmaking ability, I think Bryce Young is a little bit more natural, like of a playmaker within structure and out, kind of breaking the pocket and throwing off at different angles at times. He's just a little bit more smooth. But both could be very good quarterbacks, and I get the both of them played Alabama comparison and with the athleticism.
I see the ceiling for me for Bryce Young is Patrick Mahomes. I think they're very similar players. Mahomes is bigger. I actually think Bryce Young is farther ahead as a passer at this stage, but Mahomes does things that you can't coach. People talk all the time about, it's baseball. That looks like a feed to shortstop. Dude, he plays the game like a point guard.
Yeah.
You get the ball to the other guy however you can, over the shoulder passes, shovel passes underneath, whatever it takes, you get the ball. He plays it like a point guard. Bryce Young has some of that in him. That is for me. If you were to get Patrick Mahomes with Bryce Young, you'd be doing backflips. You'd be pretty thrilled. Nathan Floyd, I agree with you, says, I don't think Carter will make it past the Bears or Seattle in this case. Yeah, he didn't. And Jamal comes in. He says, good morning, everyone. So good morning to you as well. So I got Will Levis on the clock again. I'm thinking about trading down if I'm here at 4. I want someone to be excited about the quarterback positions. And I don't think I need a quarterback in this spot. I'm got a bunch of money into Kyler Murray. I can't go quarterback here. So if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, have they been able to stop anybody in forever? I feel like these West Coast teams that that are struggling always struggle on defense. Is that the case? Maybe I need to use a high pick on something other than an inside linebacker if I'm the Arizona Cardinals.
They might do it again, 3 times in 4 years, but no, this team needs defensive line help. They need edge rushing help. They're losing J.J. Watt. They're losing Zach Allen's going to be a free agent. They lost Chandler Jones last offseason. The one that's kind of an interesting pick here is there's no way Cliff Kingsbury is back, right? Like that's out the door, because if he was, maybe we talk Quentin Johnson here, just because they sound like they might trade DeAndre Hopkins. He's getting older, and that team runs so much 10 personnel that they need weapons to function that offense. But I think he's gone. I think you're going to see much more of a normal approach here. And I think that the one you're making the pick here, the one that I think makes sense for me is Miles Murphy. I don't think Brian Brisset is as likely of a pick. And I don't think there's a slam dunk offensive tackle that's worth a top 4 pick in this class.
I was kind of thinking Brisset. I called him what did I call him? The Destroyer from Damascus or something when I saw him in high school. I think I put that on my YouTube page. I just think build inside out with this team. No pun intended. They kind of try to do that with the inside linebackers. Now let's see if I can free up those linebackers a little bit more with a big guy up front. So I am going to go with Brian Brisset. Breesy. I'll have to look that up and double check it. I feel like it was Breesy, but it could be Brisset, Breesy. Sorry about that, Brian. You're a lot bigger than me. I want to get your name right. So they've put some money into those linebackers. Let's free them up. Let's do some of that and see if we can build that inside and work inside out. So I am going with the first Clemson player here and taking him, and that puts
the Colts.
See, I can't just do this at one time. Would you fix this? This annoys me. We got to move the Colts back with the Lions. So give me 1 second, everybody. Next time I'll do this in advance because I'll know better, and hopefully next time they will have it right. So we want to trade Detroit with Indianapolis, and we can force the trade. Force trade. Force trade. Okay, there we go. That gets it better. And I'll go ahead while you're talking about who you want to take. I'll go ahead and move Detroit with the Rams pick down again because I think they're just at 7, and then we'll be okay. They're actually between Indianapolis and Atlanta, so then we'll be okay. We're okay now, so good.
Yep. So I'm on the clock with the Indianapolis Colts. This is a team that's desperate for the quarterback position. I think that I'm going to ride the hot hand right now, which is C.J. Stroud. Now, I will say I put some feelers out on some people this week talking about C.J. Stroud, and he is coming off of by far the best game of his career. He has not looked like that this season as far as the playmaking ability. And I think he scrambled or broke pocket contain this last game more than this entire season combined. That's not been his game this year at all. And he actually was out there making some plays, and it's really unfortunate. Sorry for you Dogs fans out there, but it's unfortunate we don't get to see him play another game this year to add on to that, because that game against Georgia was, again, far and away his best game this season. With that being said, though, I think that him and Levis, it's close enough. I'll go with the hot hand, the guy that I'm more comfortable with in this draft class in C.J. Stroud. Again, I would not be shocked at all, though, if Will Levis goes before Stroud still, given the athleticism, the thicker frame that he possesses that some teams are going to want. But I personally feel more comfortable with C.J. Stroud. Don't know if he's a slam dunk top 5, but he plays the goddamn quarterback position, and somebody's going to want to take him.
I'm with you on this one. I just think, again, we talked all year about C.J. Stroud being 1 or 2. Is he going to go 1 or 2? And then all of a sudden he starts falling off a little bit. And then he reminds everybody, oh, yeah, this is why we were talking about him being 1 or 2. All of a sudden I'm dropping from top 5 to 17. That seems odd for me. I think you're actually going to have trouble getting him this late. If you want C.J. Stroud, I think you're going to have to go to 2 or 3, depending on, with Anderson and Carter there. But at 4, if I'm the Cardinals there at 4, man, I don't want to take Brian Brisset at 4. I want to trade down to somebody that wants C.J. Stroud or Will Levis. I don't want that to happen at 4. Yep. There's a drop off there after those guys. No offense to Clemson folks, but there's a Carter and Anderson are different. They're just different guys. But I like C.J. Stroud a lot. I see plenty of arm talent. He's got the frame. For me, the debate isn't Stroud here. I'm still debating Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud at number 1. That's where I am on this. So, if the Colts can get him at 5, hallelujah is how I feel about that one, Nick.
Yeah, and again, we haven't watched all the tape. And I asked some people who have been following it the whole year. This last game was somewhat of an outlier for Stroud on the season. And if he looked like that, I think we'd be talking about him being a no doubt top 5 pick, but he hasn't for the most part. Doesn't mean he won't be a top 5 guy. But I think that there's a little bit of overall, not thrown at you, Scott, but everybody in general, a little bit of recency bias. Some people probably haven't watched that much Ohio State this season on the whole. It's like, oh my God, he looked like that against Georgia on that stage. He's amazing. Well, one game sample size versus the whole body of work.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a guy that you haven't heard about.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
but
this is a guy who was 1 or 2 coming into the season and has kind of returned to that area. The recency bias, again, was the narrative was being too reactive to a good or a bad game.
Yeah.
The kid's good.
My understanding was that it was more the media putting him in the top 5 and the NFL had him more in the middle of the first round. And that's why you started to see that push down because those people who are covering the draft are being like, actually, we've had these people who are doing mocks, a year in advance, and that's not where the NFL sees him. Right. So he's being pushed down. I do think he's going to end up being a top 10 pick. I think there's 3 good quarterbacks in this class, and I would categorize him as one. I just don't think it's as no doubt for Stroud being in the top as the general feeling is on him right now.
Yeah, I do like him.
He's very good.
Again, I do like him. I feel I'm not Justin Fields like him.
Yes.
But I'm not far off
Caleb Williams.
With that. Like in this class, I'd have Justin Fields number 1.
Yeah.
No doubts. No questions asked. Justin Fields would have been number 1 for me. So if I'm looking back through the last 3 quarterback classes, including this one, I would have Justin Fields number 1 in this class.
Yep.
Mark Ingram asked for the Falcons. He says, do you think that we can get a quarterback? At 7, yes. I think you'll have a choice of 1, maybe 2, if that's where you want to go. We'll hit the next pick, which will be the Detroit Lions are on the clock with the Rams pick at 6. And I guess that one's mine, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
God, the Rams use everything. This is where you're definitely talking about, best player available, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly is. This is a spot
I'm
for a
not so worried about quarterback here again.
Jared Goff is expensive. They might be losing Ben Johnson.
I'm sorry, you're correct. I had the Rams in my head still.
Yeah.
Maybe I am thinking quarterback here.
It's certainly on the table. Now, the one caveat here that I will add is that they have their own first-round pick as well. So it's the same with the Seahawks. If they see a non-quarterback that they love, they could maybe go back up and get in Anthony Richardson if they want to go that developmental route. I mean, Goff is solid there. But this is really, this is a bonus pick for the Lions, in my opinion. You could go about any which way.
Oh, they earned it. They've earned it. The Lions have earned it.
Yes. Yes, I agree with you.
Lions fans, there's no bonuses here. You've earned everything that you get. Any good thing coming your way, Lions fans, you've earned it.
Yeah. Don't blow that goodwill like the Browns did, but I digress. I think this you could go any way here. This is a team that their defense was horrible to start the season. They improved. They've gotten very little from their wide receivers, Jamison Williams this year. So maybe we could add another one there. But I think this is add best defensive talent available on the board and just get playmakers on that side of the ball.
I agree. They've invested enough in the offensive line that you're good there. I'd be willing to give Jared Goff another shot at a lower price as opposed to Will Levis here in this spot. I don't need Skoronski, and I think he's too high. We're going to on this one anyway. When I start looking at the edge, the defensive talent, and I start looking at, big edge, Aiden Hutchinson, how about a running mate with him? Now I'm interested. Okay, I have made up my mind. I'm going Myles Murphy, and the Atlanta Falcons fan just went, damn it. Yeah. I think that's a guy that they probably want. But if I get a running mate with Aiden Hutchinson and I got 2 bookend edges, yeah, I'm a Lions fan at that point. that becomes real interesting to me.
Yeah, it certainly should. They took Josh Pascal last year as well, a guy that I really liked at the very end of the second round. I believe maybe with the I can't remember what pick it was. Maybe it was early 3rd, but really like Josh Pascal. But you need a multitude of edge rushers in today's NFL because it's a rotational position. Right. So getting another guy there, great.
Now that the Falcons are on the clock, and plus it frees one up, they work together. Who are you going to double? You can't double everybody. because then you've got 3 guys in a route and I'm only rushing 4, and you have no chance to pass against my 7 defensive backs, or 7 in coverage, however you want to say it. Now that the Falcons are on the clock with your pick, Nick, want to hit some of these comments and questions. Candler comes in. He says, good morning, guys. Just a friendly reminder, defense wins championships. We have a lot of picks in the later rounds where receivers and skill positions can be found. And I think the Falcons they'll get at least 2 receivers. I would expect them to draft one. I expect a pretty good one in free agency. No more $1.5 million guys. I expect a $5 to $10 million receiver coming in free agency. They've got a lot of money to spend. And, other than what you decide to do on the quarterback position, which there's 2 on the board here, Nick, there's really only 2 spots that I think need glaring upgrades, and receiver is one of them on the offense for the Falcons. Now, the defense, man, I can take anybody and put them anywhere on that defense. Keith says, good morning, I'm late. Who do we pick? Good morning, Keith. We haven't picked just yet. The Falcons haven't picked up just yet, so we're getting close.
His next comment was never
close,
mind.
and he just figured it out too. So let's see. Falcons on the clock at 7, Nick, with your pick. Where are you going with this spot?
Okay, so pretty much the Falcons, I think, could go almost any which way with this position, and it would get people people are going to dislike this pick probably no matter what. A lot of people are going to be very upset if I took Quentin Johnson here at this pick to take another wide receiver. I think he's different, more different than every other single player in this wide receiver class this year. He's 6'4", 220, and runs like a gazelle in the open field. You pair that with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I mean, you're talking about the size, true of weapons that nobody in the NFL probably can match as far as a size and physicality perspective, and also really building a nest for a quarterback. There would be absolutely no excuse for Desmond Ridder if I took a Quentin Johnston here, if he didn't get it done. So this is he's one that stands out here for me. You also have, I guess my real question for you is, Scott, this is long-term thinking, but is Caleb McGarry back on anything beyond the tag?
That's where this becomes interesting.
Yes.
If Caleb McGarry doesn't come back, you've got a big hole at right tackle. Yes. And you've got a front office that obviously doesn't care about the defense. I'm exaggerating, but they've gone 2 pass catchers in the top 10 the last 2 years when your offensive line was in question and your quarterback was in question and your defense was a shambles. Mm-hmm. So if Caleb McGarry isn't re-signed, we're going to operate under the assumption that he is. I think the Falcons would be in the driver's seat. I think he's pretty happy here. He's played well here, and the Falcons have the money to pay him. I'm going to work under the assumption that Caleb McGarry is back. But if he is not, offensive tackle at 7, considering Jake Matthews is in his 30s also, becomes a spot you seriously have to take a look.
And Jake Matthews' contract, you can move on from him in 2024.
He's going to get restructured, I promise you.
Probably get restructured. Okay, well, the reason I was asking that is because I like to give myself options at the offensive line position, and the top 2 offensive linemen in this class both have guard and tackle experience, which gives you a lot of versatility. You have a hole at left guard right now and question marks there. So this is not a great spot. If Miles Murphy was there, I would have taken him. I see also somebody saying Marvin Harrison Jr. would have already been off the board if he was available in this class. In my opinion, I probably would have taken him with number 4 overall, given the talent that we had available. I think in this one, it's honestly the best case scenario would be a trade down. If not trade down, I have 4 names right now that stick out to me that are non-quarterbacks. Quentin Johnson is one of them. I know I can't do that to you, Scott. Peter Skoronski is one of them. I think he's purely a guard. I can't imagine using a pick at guard. My number 1 cornerback in this class is Christian Johnson, who is the cornerback out of not Keely Ringo. He's I don't think he's as
interesting though, and that's where the trade down comes in. Do I come down and can I get Keely Ringo in a little bit later? That'd be interesting.
It would be. I think that Christian Johnson is probably the best one here. I don't even know where he's at on this board here. I think he'll end up moving it up to be the number 1. Maybe we missed him. The number 1 cornerback in the class, personally speaking. But Scott, I might have to ask you for your opinion on this one as well. I'm leaning Paris Johnson Jr. To give myself options on the offensive line. We've not been super impressed with Jake Matthews. I think he becomes a potential trade candidate, and Paris Johnson Jr. was awesome at left guard and then moved out to left tackle and has been awesome there as well. You want to make a strength to strength. You like what the teams like the Cowboys have been doing for a number of years. You like what the teams like the Lions are doing right now with a really strong offensive line. I think that if you bring Paris Johnson Jr., you give yourself a heck of a lot of options on the offensive line going forward because he's not only the number one tackle in the class, in my opinion, but he can also live at guard for a couple seasons as well. Again, I don't really like any of the options here. I see everybody saying trade down.
But we're not trading down in this right now.
Okay,
but yeah, that'd be great. But we're not going to trade down at this point. And I think the Falcons can go as high as 6 is likely on this one, if I remember. Let me look at Tankathon real quick and say Arizona's going to lose. The Falcons are 6-10. If the Rams win, they will switch spots with Atlanta if Atlanta loses. So they could go as high as 6 and then as low as well. Then if they go 7, then low as 10. So they'll pick somewhere between 6 and 10, which kind of was the fear, honestly. Mm-hmm. Maybe not quite top 10, but it's like, what's the worst case from a draft perspective? Is that you're good enough to not get a great pick.
And the one thing that's good about this right now, if this was the reality, is that you still have Will Levis on the board. Somebody is going to want to trade up to this pick to get Will Levis.
Right.
I can almost guarantee that. And you also have Nathan Floyd coming in saying Tyree Wilson. He's an option as well. Texas Tech, if you want that power, lengthy edge. I got to be honest, when I watch Tyree Wilson, he's like the last guy off the line of scrimmage every single time at a Texas Tech program where that shouldn't be happening, which is really aesthetically unpleasing for me. He does have an awesome length and power, and his long arm is probably the best in this class. I don't know if he's twitched up enough for me to like him there. I think the difference in explosiveness between him and another power edge in Miles Murphy is expansive, so I'd lean for the athleticism there. I just don't
wonder
love
what his background
Tyree
is. TCU made a habit of just taking running backs. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get 200-pound guys and grow them to where I need them to be. I wonder what his background is and how much experience he has at that position.
At Texas Tech, all I know is his.
Sorry, I had TCU in my head.
Yep, Texas Tech. I'm not super impressed with the get off there. He feels like one that would make a lot of sense as well. So that's another name, but I'm gonna go with Paris Johnson Jr. again because he's my number one offensive lineman in this class, and I think you give yourself options. Let's say you only get the tag on Caleb McGarry. Well, there's your right tackle of the future right there. Is going to be easy to flip over there. You're going to be excited about that. You want to move on. If it comes
down to me tagging Caleb McGarry at $21 million, I'm not doing it. I'm drafting a guy. Whether it becomes Paris Johnson Jr. or not. Now, me, again, you should have one of those spots available, at least one of those spots available that went ahead of you. I'm not going offensive line there. I'm thinking I've got some free agent money and I can find a mauler that can fit the I want to run it down your dang throat scheme a little bit better and a little bit cheaper. That I wouldn't go offensive line there, but like I said, depending on what Caleb McGarry does, and Jake Matthews is getting older, if you don't have McGarry re-signed, offensive tackle becomes a priority then.
How you build an offensive line is the same way you keep a fire going. You have to add a log before you're down to embers. You have to keep feeding it. And I think that's something that the Falcons team has not had for a number of years now. And if you want to run this run-centric, efficient scheme, you probably got to have some dudes up front there. So
speaking of dudes up front, if I think I've got a legit pass rusher, that's where I'm going on here, or corner. So again, the draft has it. If the edge rushers were available 2 years ago that were there last year, Kyle Pitts isn't a Falcon. Aiden Hutchinson is, Kayvon Thibodeau is, Trayvon Walker is. They draft those guys. They weren't there last year. You didn't. Wide receiver was a need, but there's so many other things that were needed also. That you'd go edge here again if you feel an edge is worthy of a top 10 pick. The phrase "best player available" rankles me just a little bit. Oh, take best player available. That's subjective. That's what bothers me about this is like people state that like it's a fact. It's not a fact. It's subjective. If you get 10 people and put together a top 20 list, nobody's going to have the same order. This isn't picking numbers off of Madden. Oh, well, he's a 98 and this guy's a 97. I'm going to take the 98. It's subjective. So you've got tiers, as Nick likes to say, you've got tiers of guys. And if I've got 3 players in that top group of where I'm picking, and then there's a little bit drop off in that tier, I'm going to pick 1 positional value, 2, and I'm going to try and fit a need. So my need is defense, big time. I need another wide receiver on offense. I might need a quarterback. That is still not off the table completely. So if I've got one of those defenders in my top tier where I'm picking, whether it's a corner or an edge or a big DL, that's where I'm going with this pick. I just don't know if these guys fit the bill just yet, Nick.
Yeah, this is a poor spot. I think overall, the Falcons would be best served to trade down here. You're going to walk away with a good player no matter what. Again, we made arguments for 4 or 5 guys at this spot. This just kind of shows you where that tier is for the Falcons. I want to see some of how these guys test too. So we'll see. In this one, I mean, heck, I saw somebody say, screw it, get Levis there. There's definitely a bunch of options there. What would you, as you force this trade, how would you have felt if I did end up taking Quentin Johnson?
I'm not that high on Levis yet.
But I meant how would you feel about Quentin Johnson?
I wouldn't be as upset with it as I was the last 2 years because this team's closer to competing. They've got, I'm not going to say they answer at quarterback, but it's trending that direction. Okay. You've got a quarterback that you can grow with that looks like he can throw the ball. Whereas if you had Matt Ryan until now, he'd be 38 years old and can't push the ball downfield. Basically my point is you wasted 2 years of Kyle Pitts' career. And you didn't get any better. Your team didn't get any better. So he wasn't going to help you win right now. But that's okay. It wasn't that Pitts was a bad pick. It was that the narrative of, Kyle Pitts is a win now pick. No, it's not.
Not tight end.
No, it's not. Kyle Pitts is 20 years old. Drake London was just turned 21 years old. These are picks for 2025, 2024, 2025. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But the problem is do you have your quarterback situation sorted? Now, if you strike gold in the 3rd round, you're a freaking genius. But
lucky.
If you didn't and you passed on Justin Fields and now you've got all these wide receivers with no one to throw them to and no one to block for him, there's the problem. Right now, the blocking part looks okay. That was probably the biggest surprise of the season for me.
Yeah, looked really good.
Improvement on the offensive line.
Again, we talked.
The improvement on the offensive line was my biggest surprise of the season, pleasant surprise of the season. Now, do you have the quarterback situation sorted? Maybe.
We'll find out. Yeah, we'll find out.
Top 10 picks sitting there counting on it.
Yeah, 100%. It will be really interesting. Number of ways that could have gone. Another thing about Quentin Johnston, with the T in there. If you did bring him in, this would be a really interesting pitch job for a quarterback to come in here. Desmond Ridder didn't get it done in 2023, but hey, look at who we have: Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Quentin Johnston with the offensive line. Would be damn interesting to see if they could maybe woo a quarterback in here, given how the league is changing and quarterbacks are getting more power, kind of almost dictating where they can go a little bit more.
So, moving on to the Raiders, all of a sudden this pick becomes real easy for me.
Yep.
You got to get a quarterback, don't you?
100%.
Derek Carr will not play on that contract with the Raiders next year. He's got a $33 million hit with a $5 million dead cap hit. Everybody's talking about trade this, trade that. No. Just wait for them to cut him, because you would have to agree to a different contract before you make that trade. And Derek Carr doesn't have to agree to a different contract. He can just say, no, I'll become a free agent. Unless the right team makes the right offer and offers him the right contract, he's going to be a free agent when they cut him and clears waivers. He's got a $33 million deal. Nobody is paying him $33 million next year. Not the Raiders, not the Colts, not anybody. So the Raiders are in it for a quarterback, and this becomes a real easy pick for me with Will Levis still on there. I'm going Will Levis.
And the Carolina Panthers scream, who are now on the clock technically. It should not be the Eagles. It should be the Panthers
let me switch those. Like I said, PFF, get this together for you, and we can help you. We'll give you, any more pub that you don't really need. So we got Carolina Panthers switching with the New Orleans Saints, correct?
Yep, and the Saints will have the
Or
10th pick.
actually, I guess they would probably have it as the Eagles. So we want to flip 9 and 10, force this trade, and that looks correct. Yeah,
Looks good to
Panthers
me.
from New Orleans, and then Eagles from Las Vegas.
Looks pretty good to me.
Okay, there we go.
Panthers
so the
now
Panthers are now on the clock, and they would have been one of those teams that would have traded up.
Yeah, no doubt about that. In my mind, that was definitely a team that could move up. You also have, I find it interesting. Again, we have talked about it earlier, but you have the Houston Texans with the 12th pick in this one. Maybe it's not actually that one in real life, but let's say they love a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter, and they only like C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, et cetera, et cetera. Moving up from 12 to 5 to get that quarterback and getting your number one player in the class is on the table, in my opinion, when you have that extra draft capital to play with. Nathan Floyd coming in with Jake Matthews' age. There's no thought of moving him to right tackle or guard. Certainly possible. The first domino is Caleb McGarry. And if Caleb McGarry is gone, then this Paris Johnson Jr. trade or pick becomes a lot more feasible and understandable, but it's hard to know right now.
I think you're okay. You're hoping on him, banking on him for the next 3 years. I think you're going to see him get an extension. You take the $33 million that he's owed this year. Okay. You pay it off to him in a bonus and then extend his contract 5 years. That knocks that $33 million, that bonus that is hit this year, to 33 divided by 5. Let's just say it was $35 million, $7 million. I give him a $2 million base salary. His cap hit just became 9. Went from 33 to 9. Now I signed Chris Lindstrom to an extension. I signed Caleb McGarry, and guess what? My cap hit didn't change. So, but the problem with that is, can you count on Jake Matthews still being a good player for X amount of times? It may cost you $35 million in cash. The problem with the Falcons, unlike if you're my age, isn't spending the money. It's spending the money wisely. Arthur Blank has wasted millions. Thomas Dimitroff has wasted $100 million of Arthur Blank's money. They'll spend the money. And the salary cap, we talk about it being a myth. It's a myth if you're investing in players that still have time on their clocks. Where it becomes really very factual is when those guys start regressing and you don't want them anymore, and they're sitting there with a negative dead cap. It's like being underwater on a house. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, the loan, I bought a house. Who cares if I carry, too high a payment? It's appreciating in value. Yeah, until you hit a recession and then you're $200,000 underwater on your house and you're screwed.
Yeah.
So it works very similar that way. I think you can get another 3 years out of Jake Matthews, and I think they will extend him, knock 50% of his cap number on, send some of that money to Caleb McGarry, and extend Chris Lindstrom. Those are my predictions right now. Market 53 minutes on 1/4/23.
Do it. I'm on the clock with Carolina here. Nathan says Anthony Richardson, edge rusher for Carolina. I'm going to go with neither. I'm going to go. We've been talking about him a lot. I'm going to take him off. He's my number one wide receiver in this class. Quentin Johnston, wide receiver here. Outside of, obviously they took, Terrence Marshall a couple years ago, but he's been looking like a wide receiver 3 or 4 at best. They have DJ Moore, who's been a really good player out there, but they don't really have a height, weight, speed, catch radius guy like a Quentin Johnston. Getting a dynamic weapon out there on the boundary for whoever is the quarterback there, I think, is a good way to go. Also, we're seeing what the market looks like for wide receiver right now. It's exploding. It's insane. Teams want playmakers on the boundary, specifically if they can get them. And I think that there's a massive tier difference between Quentin Johnson versus the next available wide receivers, who are your Jordan Addisons of the world, your Jackson Smith and Jigbas, your Josh Downs, guys who are probably more slot than Quentin Johnson, who is, let me just pull up his size here real quick, just to kind of talk about the difference. 6'4", 220. He's different than these other guys out here versus a Jordan Addison who's 6 foot, 175. Just different. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 6 foot, 195. So I think that Quentin Johnson's a really good player, and I would be excited to whoever gets him.
So I think that becomes interesting. And then my question ends up being, who's throwing to him?
You probably go out there, and maybe this is a team that makes a play for David Carr. Maybe this is a team that goes out there.
Derek this way. Now you're doing the old guy thing.
Yep. Sorry. David Carr's been in the news because he's been talking about
Right.
Derek Carr. But this becomes a veteran quarterback position. And again, I talked about it earlier with Harbaugh. I love the way this offensive line is shaped up for Carolina. And I really like DJ Moore a lot. I think Tommy Tremble is a very good tight end prospect for them. This would be a very, I think, a good enticing position. Now, the big issue is cap space. Cap space is fake if you have liquid cash available to some extent. So the Panthers could get it done for somebody.
So that puts me on the board with the Eagles.
It is the Eagles too.
Yep. And the Eagles start becoming real interesting on this. Oh, look at Deanna coming in. Deanna Henry coming in super for us. Thank you so much, Deanna, for checking us out and finding us on this show as well. I hope you are enjoying your morning, and we appreciate the support as always, whether we're here or whether we're there. You seem to find us, and we love you for it. So thank you so much. Nick, anything to say
about the trade down? I mean, we're not doing
no. Thank Deanna for a week so we can get out, and then I'll make my final pick.
Okay. I was talking about Deanna asking, should we trade down the Broncos? If the Broncos have the trade down available, then yes. Yes. So that was answering Deanna. But who knows? Right now, where the Broncos are going to end up picking, it's pretty crazy. The 49ers keep on winning with Brock Purdy out there. They've won 5 in a row with Brock Purdy. Insane. Now, granted, their defense is playing different than anybody else in the league right now. If you look at like CPOE, EPA, or whatever, they're up in the top right corner. Everybody else is further away. That's how great D'Amico Ryans is doing out there. But if the Broncos can trade down, I believe they should, especially if they can get some 2024 draft capital and start putting themselves in a position where maybe they can go up and get a quarterback in 2024 if Russ falls off or continues to play this poorly.
Oh man, I'm struggling here with the Eagles. I want to do something a little off the wall on this one. I'm looking at their ratings for their players. Brandon Graham. Wasn't Brandon Graham a Falcon for a cup of coffee and they cut him? Or who am I thinking of?
I'm not sure, but Brandon Graham.
There was a big Michigan Brandon that I'm thinking of I'm like, is that the same guy? I can't remember who it was though that they cut. He was a edge outside linebacker. Help me out, Falcons fans.
I mean, maybe you're right about him playing for the Falcons. I feel like Brandon Graham was drafted by the Eagles and has been a lifer. And he is out of Michigan. He was a heavier guy, but I remember him being drafted by the Eagles.
But my point was 14. The Falcons cut him not too long ago.
Okay, it's not the same. I don't think it's the same.
Now he's the 5th rated edge in the league. So my point is I'm looking at those guys that they've got at edge, and they're getting tremendous production at edge. Who's not is Robert Quinn has been bad. Josh Sweat, he's really good. Hassan Reddick and Brandon Graham. I'm like, okay, I don't necessarily need edge. I think Javon Hargrave is a free agent after this year, if I'm not mistaken. I very well could be. I really could use some reinforcements on the defensive line, but there's nobody there that's really tickling my fancy. So the safety position has been a little bit of a weakness for him, according to PFF. You know what could be real interesting to me, Nick?
Brian Branch?
How about Keely Ringo? And I could bring him in and put him in a nickel. I could put him in a corner. I've got a versatile 6'2", 210 safety-like cornerback that I could use in a bunch of different spots as a rover type. He'd be my wild card on defense. So I'm going to do that for y'all, Philly, and you can tear me to pieces later. But let me explain why. Again, you're talking about a height, weight, speed, good football player. I'm not convinced yet that he is a lockdown corner on the next level. What I know he can be is a playmaker. So if I've got my corners in Philly and I could use some help at safety or a nickel or however I want to use him, I could use this guy as my wild card. I could use him in a bunch of different spots where he can make plays. He's just my defensive playmaker that gets to freelance a little bit out there. I think, Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, except with 10 times the athleticism. No offense, that's an exaggeration, but he's bigger, he's faster, he's stronger. No question about that. So, I would be very, very intrigued to give a chess piece like Ringo to the Phillies defense with the pieces that are already in place, considering I don't see a DL that I like right here, and I feel pretty good about wide receiver, et cetera, that this becomes a very interesting piece for me. So I'm going to go Keely Ringo to the Eagles, and they seem to like to pick Georgia players, even if the Falcons don't.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have gone Keely Ringo here.
Most
Personally.
wouldn't. That's okay.
Yeah.
This is, but I'll tell you why I did. This is why.
The guy that you were describing there was Branch.
Okay.
The player, the type of player that you're describing is Branch. He was number 2 for Alabama this year in tackles for loss. He's not the biggest guy, but he is everywhere. It is wild to watch. He plays that rover position for them, that nickel safety body type. He has been phenomenal this year. He's not the most darling athletic body type out there, but you can't watch Alabama without noticing Brian Branch. The names that I probably would have thrown out there, I think, given Howie Roseman and how positional value oriented he is, I think that Tyree Wilson would have made a lot of sense for them there. You talked about Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham is ancient. Robert Quinn is ancient. And the other edge rushers you mentioned there, Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, are more of those speed boundary rushers where Tyree Wilson can be a little bit more of a power edge setter there. So I think that one would have made a lot of sense.
I do too.
And the wild card here, it's the same with the Falcons. Eagles probably have the best offensive line in football. How do you keep the best offensive line? To keep investing in it. They have Jason Kelsey is going to be probably retiring here pretty darn soon. And also their right guard and Isaac Semialu, I think of Oregon State, if it's how you pronounce his last name, is a free agent after this year. I'd be pretty shocked if he comes back. Peter Skoronski here is about as safe as it gets. And you just continue. If you want to run this type of offense and be this consistently good, keep investing in the offensive line. And I think Skoronski is probably one of the highest floor players in this. The last one I want to add, James Bradbury, I think, is a free agent at the end of the year. They've signed a 1-year deal for him. And Howie Roseman loves positions of value. Cornerback is a position of value. So my number 1 cornerback in this class is Christian Gonzalez. I just think he moves differently than these other guys. I think Keely Ringo is a great athlete. I don't think he's super fluid. I think he's a little bit tight.
Which is why I said safety.
Yeah.
Does he end up being at safety on that? Because I agree with you. A press and release corner. We know how Kirby Smart likes to play defense. It's usually very aggressive. So if I'm not a press and release corner and I need to be in space, let's move into safety, or and not necessarily to safety right away. Scotty hadn't played safety. That's moronic. No, I get it. He's a rookie, but that's the luxury you have as the Philadelphia Eagles picking in the top 10. Yeah. You can Baltimore Raven this thing and pick this guy who's a phenomenal athlete, ease him into however you want to into your system where he's most comfortable, and now you've got a spectacular athlete in your system playing wonderful defense, even if it's not necessarily the same thing he was doing in college.
Yeah,
that's how the Ravens have had the best defenses in the leagues for 20 years.
Yep.
And the Eagles have a chance to do that. But everything you said makes perfect sense, Nick. You know the Eagles. You knew the Eagles better than I did. I'm looking at these guys and thinking, boy, that'd be a fun piece. That'd be a fun chess piece to throw out there for the Eagles. And again, based on good trades and good drafting and good coaching, the Eagles are in a prime spot right now. And congratulations, Eagles fans. You're the envy of a lot of teams right now.
As they should be. Good job by Howie Roseman. They also have, because of that trade where the Saints gave up a future first-round pick for a wide receiver who's very good, but gave up first-round pick for a wide receiver, they also traded a 2024 second-round pick. Talk about those future earnings. Most teams don't even give a hoot about picks for the upcoming season because they need to win here and now. Howie Roseman trading for picks 2 years in the future and getting value on that. So shout out to them. That'll be probably a good pick for them. And it's a good team. Keely Ringo, very good athlete. We'll see how his draft process plays out. I think he's going to get pushed down a little bit just based on what I've seen from him. Marvin Harrison Jr. took him a little bit, and granted, he did that to everybody this season. He's incredible, but really interesting. Some other guys still on the board that I think are worth talking about here. Obviously, Peter Skoronski is still on the board. He'll be an interesting one. I do really like Brian Branch. I think Michael Mayer's fine. I don't really get the no doubt first round hype on him. The best guys on the board for me here would be Peter Skoronski, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, Brian Branch, Broderick Jones, still available as well. So those are the ones that stick out. But again, I'm going to be honest. I think it's early to say this, but I'm not super impressed with this first round overall talent wise. I think there's some good quarterbacks up top. I think Will Anderson and Jalen Carter are great. But after that, I think it falls off pretty precipitously after that.
And that was the knock on last year's draft. And then I went to the Senior Bowl and found value between 30 and 150 that was very, very deep.
Yes.
Very good players. So we'll see how that goes. It might not be as exciting at the top as some other drafts. Caleb, the rest of the draft could be crap, but everybody's going to talk about Caleb Williams next year, and he's the
Drake
rising
May.
tide.
Don't forget Drake May.
I know, but the quarterbacks, the rising tide lifts all ships, and the rest of the draft might not be worth a darn. So we'll see. But this was our first shot at a top 10 on this. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll cut this up into separate pieces for each team and get that out there. And like I said, Nick and I are going to start doing more NFL stuff. I'm headed for the Shrine Bowl. I'm headed for the Senior Bowl. Both of those at the end of the month. Getting a brand new camera. Should look good for my channel. So, and thanks in part to, folks like Deanna Hendry coming in and helping to do that so I can improve my product for you, so we can always get better. That's what we're trying to do. So thanks everybody for being here. And if you have any questions or comments, absolutely, please hit them on the YouTube channel. They're easier to find than the Facebook ones, unfortunately. But it's just youtube.com. They've actually changed to an system, so it's just at Scott Kennedy for YouTube.
And real quick before we get on out of here, if Falcons fans, this has obviously been a Falcons show for a while. We're kind of transitioning to more draft centric, still with the Falcons lens. But let me know who you would have taken with that spot, because it was definitely a tough spot for me. I feel like maybe if you'd have pushed me really hard on keeping the tackles that you have for the next 3+ seasons, maybe I'd have gone with Tyree Wilson there. Maybe I would have even gone with a Will Levis. Let me know who you would have taken, because I don't think that's the best situation. And don't tell me trade down. Okay, of course there was no trade down there. Nick, you should have traded down.
Yeah, we were locked into that pick. So are you?
Yeah. Yep. That's my favorite. Okay, we're not predicting trade downs. Half the chat says trade down. Okay, yeah.
Well, I help with that when I talked about that Kyle Pitts number 4. My top picks were trade down, Justin Fields, trade down, and Penny Sewell, and then trade down. Those were my my 5. This team had too many holes to. But again, if you were in the 3 spot, 49ers, why couldn't you have offered the Falcons that pick? 3 first-round picks.
Yeah,
that's what we do here. But we're going to get out of here. We went long. I was afraid it was going to go too fast, but we enjoy this so much. And thanks everybody for being here. That we went almost 70 minutes today, Nick. So I know you got to get going. Nick and I will be back tomorrow on Broncos for Breakfast at Mile High Huddle. And we will be back on Monday with that will finalize the draft order in the top 10 for sure.
Top 18.
Yeah, I don't think they have anybody on Monday Night Football playing. I don't know if they're even playing Monday Night Football.
Nope.
The draft order will be finalized, and we can start looking at this thing in earnest, and we'll be one day closer to national champion and all that fun stuff. So everybody, thank y'all for being here. We had a great time doing our first mock draft, and we will see you if you want to come join us on Mile High Huddle tomorrow. We'd love to see you. Otherwise, we'll see you Monday.